First of all, a very happy birthday to Sonic State, who is 10 years old. If you're 10 years old, I would think probably just looking for you. Anyway, moving heavily on, I first met Dave Spears when I read an article about him in Gay News. And it was quite an interesting article, and amongst talking about the various things that he likes to do in his spare time, of which I didn't understand any of them, but they involved whips, wet celery and flippers with other men, he mentioned this wonderful thing about the Minimonsta. Actually, I think that was the same thing in the article. The Minimonsta, of course, is this wonderful thing which is just a 21st century Mini Moog. I have to say, in my life, the Mini Moog is the best instrument I've ever come across in my life. And you always wish that it could go one stage further. But because it's a great old analog machine, it was impossible to go one stage further. Until my good friend, Dave Spears, came up with the Minimonsta. And that is truly a 21st century Mini. And who could want anything more than a 21st century Mini? Except that he wears one. was that all right?
And they'll keep it as well. That's the best thing about these guys.
Okay. Minimonsta. Hello again. Dave Spears from G Media Music, G-Force, and now being distributed by M Audio. This year, I'm here to talk to you about the Minimonsta. Well, the Minimonsta Meloman. Meloman part is the whole morph stuff. Quite important. But let's have a look at the instrument. It's based on the original Mini Moog, obviously, with a load of differences. We've made it polyphonic, monophonic, legato mode, obviously, but high and low note priority legato, and unison with a D-tune, so it can sound thin, or fat, or monstrous. On the original Mini Moog, if you wanted to have an LFO, you had to give up the third oscillator. On this, you can assign an LFO to almost any main GUI parameter, with the exception of the waveform range and the actual waveform knobs themselves. To apply an LFO is really easy, and anyone who's got any experience with the Ohmforce products will understand this. Click on the knob, you see the knob that you're affecting come up in the window here. Apply some amplitude, whatever speed, 10 waveforms, whole host of stuff, sample and hold. You can sync the LFO to come in at a specific point during its cycle. You can apply it, as I said before, you can apply it pretty much to any main GUI parameter. So we got one on the cutoff frequency. Let's apply one to the resonance or emphasis, as it was called on the Mini. You can even apply it to contour. Now you can see as soon as an LFO is applied, the blue illumination tells you that the LFO has been applied to that particular parameter, the LFO or an additional ADSR. So you can have an ADSR modulating an ADR. That's quite intriguing. And again, like I say, you can tell that by the blue illumination, which means that you can build up quite complex sequence stuff using the LFO things. So here's like a sequence where we have modulation on each of the oscillator volume controls, and the cutoff frequency, and the resonance, and the contour, even the delay amount. So just a one note, just holding a one note will give you a cyclic sequence. Now the real key to the Minimonsta and what sets it apart from any other Mini emulation is the morphing capabilities, and hence the Minimonsta Meloman name. To use the morph stuff, you simply drag the morph octave, which is the reversed octave, into any position on the keyboard. Now normally I find that I like to assign it to the bottom octave of a 61 note key. So let's take a really simple patch like a theremin. Now here, each of the sub-patches that correspond to the keys within the Meloman octave have a slightly different tuning. So where people do a theremin patch, they may use some glide or portamento. It just doesn't really work. So here, if you look at the tuning, I'm doing is morphing between the sub patches using the Melloman octave. Now this is also dynamic as well, so the harder you hit it, the quicker the transition. Some guy was doing all the Portishead stuff on here earlier, which was quite interesting. Aside from the theremin patches or any other patch, it works particularly well with pads. So we call up a pad. Again, this is just using tuning, but you can assign any patch to a sub patch or a meta patch. It sounds complicated, but in principle it's simple. So what we're hoping is that this goes some way to kind of redressing the balance, so that soft synths aren't expressive instruments in a real-time performance. Other features, the original Minimoog users would take the output, would route it back in via the external input, and then overdrive and saturate the filters. And this was a really cool effect and used to get like loads of balls out of the original instrument. So if I select a patch here, so the sound without the overdriven. So you turn the feedback on, the external input on, and then we start to boost the input. You can see the overload light and you can hear the difference. And you can really get some bombastic tones with this. Boost the resonance. And again, back to the normal tone. With the overload. So it's just got that bite that the old analog, well, that the original instrument had. It comes with over 5,700 patches, but that's included in the 12 sub-patches within each meta patch. Anything ranging from... So we can take that, assign the Melloman octave to it. So it just makes it that little bit more expressive. And again, because you can modulate these things, because you can modulate any main GUI parameter, let's have a look at, we got some great sound designers on this. Davey B, Howard Scar, Take a Bow, and Rosa 2. So when have you heard a MIDI emulation? Sound half like a piano. Again, that's because we're modulating sustain level, some of the decays, even the fine tune of oscillator 2. You can build out some really, really complex patches. And also some pretty decent simple ones. One of my favourites, the Wurlitzer. Again, the 12 variations for this patch. Polyphonic, monophonic, legato and unison. Unison is where this thing really begins to kick. Go to the unison section. Tug-a-trance or tug-a-tance. Sorry Andy, I'm totally phased, man. Can I fucking... I'm normally Mr. One Take. Or an additional. Jesus, I nearly brought the whole thing down there. Or you can, or an additional. Fucking shit.